Well, hello students. I want to congratulate you on your completing your round one icebreaker speech, and I hope the first few weeks of your semester are going well. I've decided since round two is a pretty major speech, your first of two, that I'll go ahead and give you another recording and maybe go over some slides with you and help you, maybe that'll help you prepare for this one. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, this next speech is an informative speech, and there's many ways to classify informative speeches, but for the purpose of our class, we're going to break them down into four parts. You may speak about an object, and an object can be anything. It can be a person, living or dead. It can be a place, maybe a place that you visited, a city or a country. A bridge or an object or building can be an object. Objects cover a lot of things. So you can report to us about an object, you could talk about a process, and that's kind of like a demonstration speech. And that shows us how something is made, how something works, or how something is done. Sometimes students will show us how to make food, and they'll video themselves making food, and in my face-to-face classes sometimes they bring the food in. You could show us how to operate a camera or play an instrument, anything like that. An event is any event that you want to report on. Maybe you are into the parades that are around here locally, or Cinco de Mayo, or maybe you're interested in history and maybe one of the battles of World War II. You could report on that. A concept is just any kind of thing like human rights or Confucianism, anything like that. But when you speak to inform, you are acting as a teacher or a lecturer. So I just want to make you aware of that. Okay, some guidelines. You don't ever want to overestimate what the audience knows. You have to assume that your audience, anytime you speak, knows nothing about your topic. So you have to explain it so thoroughly that they can't help but understand. It's almost like talking to little kids. So try and do your best to relate the topic to their audience. Don't be too technical. Use concrete words instead of abstractions, and make sure to personalize your ideas. Be creative when you do that. Tell a story how this happened to you or why you chose this topic. So, you need to speak on an object, a process, a concept, or an event. So how do you select a topic? Well, you can brainstorm. First, you make a list of things that people, places, and things. Just start jotting them down. Maybe you want to talk about your favorite athlete. That would be under the people column. Again, your places are places you visited or you'd like to visit. And just start breaking them down. What would you like to tell us about the place you visited? Here's a list of a few ideas to help you brainstorm, but if you get on Sakai under the Resources tab, there is a list of 100 items, 100 topics for informative speaking to help you, if you look through those, that might help you make a decision or come up with an idea. So be sure you check those out. So after you come up with a topic, you need to determine exactly what you want the audience to know. So a specific purpose is what you want to say as a speaker and what you want your audience to know. So usually the specific purpose statement starts with these four words: to inform my audience, and then you determine what it is. So this student chose hurricanes, so they're going to tell you about the parts of a hurricane. So now we're getting more specific after we chose our topic. Now you can start with your own knowledge, but you're going to have to find some other materials to back up your information. So you need to figure out where you're going to get that. First, draw on your own personal experience, telling your audience a story about how this happened to you or why you're interested in this topic, and telling them the story can bring your speech to life. So always start with your own knowledge. Then you can build on that. You can go to the library, or you can get on the internet to find different resources, quotes and things like that that you want to reference. The library on campus is very good. The entire top floor is the research area, the reference area. They have all kinds of newspapers, periodicals. There's books on quotes. There's all kinds of things. And they're very helpful in the library too. You can also do an interview. This is another way you can gather research. You might want to interview your coach or your boss or a professor or a grandparent or somebody like that, and that would be a very helpful material to gather. Okay. All right, so now you've got some research material. So how are you going to support your ideas? Well, after you come up with your knowledge, you went to the library, you got on the internet, you did an interview maybe, or one of those things, or all of those things. Then you need to come up with, okay, what am I going to use from those? Well, you can use examples within your speech, and these are examples that you would actually say to your audience. For example, and you would show them statistics, or you would quote somebody giving testimony, and this is how it can help bring power to your speech. Here's an example of how you would verbally say a quote in a speech. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and we're quoting this person on this date, and this makes your speech very powerful. And you'll see some examples when I actually show you an example of a speech on how that can be used. Okay, so you've got your topic, you know specifically what you want to say, then you want to come up with your main points. Most speeches have at least 2 main points, but no more than 5. The reason for that is, well, round 2 is only 4 to 6 minutes long, but any speech that you give, no matter how long it is, audiences can't handle more than 5 main points because their attention span is not there. So keep that in mind. Always keep your main points limited. So we're going to move now on how to choose your main points. Well, first, if you want to go in chronological order, if you choose a process, they all go in chronological order because there's steps involved. So it follows a time pattern. And here's an example of some main points about esports. They began in the 80s, and this is what happened in the 90s, and so on. So you wouldn't want to start in the middle of this time and move around. That would be too hard for the audience to follow. So you want to start at the beginning. Spatial order means that your main points follow some kind of directional pattern. Front to back, left to right, up to down, east to west, something like that. So here we're talking about this hurricane again. So we're going to start at the center. We're going to go around the eye and then the eye wall. So it follows some kind of direction. And that helps you know which main point to go first. The third type of way to order your main points for an informative speech is topical order. And this just lists the points, especially if you're talking about a person, their accomplishments. If it doesn't go in chronological or follows a directional pattern, then you would just put them in what we call topical. Okay, just some tips here. What I want to say here, try for the same pattern of wording. For instance, if you're going to talk to us about weight loss, then you have 3 main points. Your first main point would read like, weight loss can help you be physically better. Main point 2, weight loss can help you sleep better. Number 3, weight loss, you know what I'm saying, the same pattern of wording, and this helps your audience follow along. Balance the time devoted to each main point. Don't spend 85% of your speech on your first main point and only 10% on your other 2 and what have you. Okay, so make sure you balance it out. Okay, so we're still talking about supporting materials for your ideas. Now we're moving now into the body of your speech. So you've got maybe 3 main points. Then you have supporting materials for those main points. Now you have to connect your main points, and we call these connective words. And these are words or phrases that connect your ideas. There's different types, and you can read about them. I do have a few examples here. Here's an example of a transition. And these words that are underlined are connective words. I don't care what kind of words you use. I just want to hear connective words in your speeches. You can't just go from one main point to the next without some words to maybe tell the audience the point you're leaving and the point you're coming to. So make sure you have words in there and you don't just jump from point to point. Remember, we're trying to do speak in conversational quality. So when you speak in your everyday conversations, you use connective words. So use them in your speeches too. Here's an example of a preview, and this is just using the words like, first we're going to talk about this, and second we'll look at this. All right, so that's the body of your speech. You have main points, you have supporting materials for those main points, you have connective words. Okay, beginning and ending the speech. Now we're going to talk about how you should introduce your speech and then how you should conclude it. We already talked about the body because that is the most important. Now, how do we start your speech? Well, there are 4 things that you need to do. Some of you might have been struggling a little bit trying to figure out how to do your introduction speech. Actually, there are 3 things you need to do in an introduction. Gain attention, state your topic, establish your credibility, and preview your main points. There's different ways that you can gain attention. You can ask a question. This is the easiest way for beginning speakers to gain attention of the audience, and that's a rhetorical question. It doesn't require an answer, but it just gets the audience to look at you. For instance, a rhetorical question would be, have you ever stayed up all night studying for an exam and you didn't lose, maybe you suffer from sleep deprivation, something like that. You could startle the audience, relate the topic to the audience somehow. You could tell a story. Again, we all love stories. And you can use a visual aid. So these are ideas, and you can read more about this in the chapters. The second thing you need to do is a credibility statement. And that is you telling the audience, I have experience in this topic. I've done a lot of research in this topic. Anything that shows you're qualified to speak. So make sure you state your credibility. A lot of speakers don't do this. And why would an audience want to listen to you if they don't know you have experience? Somewhere along the line, you need to preview your topic. So that's the third thing you need to do in your introduction. The last thing is a preview statement. And this is just previewing what your main points are going to be. For example, today I'm going to talk to you about the 3 parts of a hurricane. First, I'm going to talk about the eye. We're going to go around the eye wall and then the center, something like that. And you preview your main points. So in your introduction, you tell your audience what you're going to tell them in the speech. Okay, and then in the body of your speech, you tell them. Here's an example of an introduction. Notice how all 4 points are covered.
Tonight, after the sun goes down, I'd like you to go outside, lift your eyes to the heavens, and gaze at the night sky. If it's clear, you'll be able to see the moon, some stars, and maybe some distant planets. Yet right outside our atmosphere is something not so beautiful, something that Scientific American calls a minefield in Earth orbit. Another name for this minefield is junk. Space junk. Satellites that no longer work, pieces from spent rockets, debris from collision of man-made objects. Together, they form a floating landfill that orbits the Earth at speeds of over 18,000 miles per hour. The European Space Agency estimates that there are hundreds of thousands of pieces of space junk. I first learned about space junk last year in my physics class. Now, after doing research for this speech, I understand why there's an international effort to clean up the landfill whirling around our planet. Today, we'll look first at the history of space junk, then at the way it's affecting space exploration, and finally, at some proposals scientists have advanced to clean it up.
Okay, so previewing your main points and actually an introduction is very important in any speech. Okay, so you've given your introduction, you've given the body of your speech, your main points, your supporting materials, and your connectives. Now you're going to end your speech. There are actually 2 things you need to do in the conclusion. That's signal the end of the speech and restate your main points. So signaling the end of the speech, all you have to do is say words like in conclusion or in summary or today my purpose has been, and then you restate the main points. Today I've talked to you about hurricanes. I've talked to you about what happens at the center of the hurricane, the eye of the hurricane, and the eye wall. So when you give a speech, in the introduction, you tell your audience what you're going to tell them. In the body of your speech, you tell them. And then in the conclusion of your speech, you tell them what you just told them, so they can't help but understand. Here's a sample of a conclusion.
In conclusion, while humans have managed to go boldly where no one has gone before, we've also left a lot of garbage behind. Space junk is growing every day and poses serious problems for the future of space exploration. Fortunately, scientists from NASA and the international community are exploring ingenious ways of taking out the trash.